G'day, folks. It is your coach here, and boy, oh boy, am I excited to talk about Space Lizard, but not just Space Lizard. We're talking the lizards that sit in the mortal realms, not the ones being dreamt of, the ones that are real. They are the really real Seraphon. We are talking all things Coalesced Seraphon, and my guest is the Slan of YouTube. He is a part of the Dallas Gaming Group Defenders of the Citadel. He claims that he is the top Seraphon player in Texas. But when I went to Dallas, I couldn't validate that because I was smashing down barbecue. It is Caleb Hastings. How are you, mate?
Howdy, y'all. How y'all doing? Good to be on
y'all.
Howdy, y'all.
Could we do any more? Like I'm going g'day, and you're like, howdy, y'all.
Yeah, hey, that's what we do here. Some of us. That's
all right, mate. I'm excited to talk because Seraphon is certainly a great battle tome. It's a fresh battle tome. My biggest gripe is that we've seen less than 50% of the battle tome. People have been drawn to the Starborn, and people have been drawn to the Skinks, to the Salamanders, and the Slan. And that's not a problem. I have absolutely no issue with it. But there's so much great stuff in this battle tome that no one's talking about. And I thought you would be a person who'd be able to explain. I mean, obviously, you could talk to me about the Starborn as well. But I would love to explore the other side of the book. And if anyone is drawn to the dinosaurs, anyone does want to run those dinosaur riding dinosaurs, our Saurus Cav. I thought what a great opportunity to talk all things Seraphon Coalesced.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I love Coalesced. They're a lot of fun. Yeah. Some of the Starborn may be a little bit better, some people claim, but the Coalesced is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Like, let's make no mistakes. At the moment, probably in the future as well, that the Starborn is just better. Like, from a domination of magic and some of the teleporting shenanigans and the summoning shenanigans, it is better. But it's not everyone's style. Not everyone is drawn to running Skinks and and Salamanders. Not everybody wants to do that the heavy meta lists. Not to say that this build isn't competitive, but let's explore some of the options. And hey, maybe there is an opportunity for you to bring that Carnosaur into your Starborn, or at least let's look at, is there a way to build some competitive lists? And Caleb has given me 2 lists we're going to explore today. So we're going to go through 2 different builds of the Coalesced.
Yep.
Before we get into that, do you want to introduce yourself to? Obviously, Caleb does have a Seraphon-based channel. In the channel description, I do have the link as well. So go check that out if you are a fan of the Seraphon. He breaks down lots and lots and lots of stuff. I couldn't believe there's a whole YouTube channel dedicated to Seraphon, but there is one.
Yeah. That's what I focus on is Seraphon. I started off just kind of doing my tournament reports there on my channel. And once we got the new battle tome, I'm like, I got to break this down. Let's try to go through each unit, build some lists. So having some fun there. Since we're stuck in COVID, we can't do too many tournaments. I'm doing some games that we've done with some buddies and kind of breaking down the minutia of Seraphon.
Mate, you're smashing it out, and absolutely worth checking out. Do go and subscribe. Go check it out. He's smashing out content for Seraphon. I couldn't believe there's so much to talk about with one army. But what drew you to them? Of all the armies that are available in Age of Sigmar, what drew you to Age of Sigmar, and what drew you to the Seraphon specifically?
Well, you know, we have a gaming group that's a couple guys, and we've been doing different games for a while, and they kept saying, you know, you really ought to do this Warhammer thing. And I was like, nah, you know, this Warhammer's not for me. I don't know what y'all are talking about here. I can't paint. I don't want to do any of that. And they actually kind of tricked me into it. They're like, here's this board game. It's called Warhammer Quest, I think is what it was. And so they brought it over to one of our game nights, and we're playing that. I'm like, all right, this is fun. You know, I'm having fun here. I can understand it maybe. And one of the guys like, guys, I just need y'all's help. I need y'all to help me. I think it was like the Age of Sigmar starting box or something. It was like Stormcast versus Khorne, maybe.
Yeah.
He goes, I need y'all's help to help me cut some stuff out and glue this together. It's just, we're going to sit around, talk, have some fun, and just do this. All right. So started doing that, and that's what hooked me. I'm just building the models there, cutting them out of the sprues. I don't know, something about it. I love building the models. I probably like building them better than I do painting them. But that's kind of what got us hooked in. And then
fun fact, building is actually my favorite part as well.
Yeah.
I've thought about being a commission builder at some stage. I'm like, I couldn't do the commission painting, but I would happily build your models. I'll scrape those mold lines. I'll glue those parts. Maybe not some of the old terrain, but the building is very relaxing. But please continue. So you've been, the Venus flytrap has started. You've played a little bit of Warhammer Quest. You've been asked to help build some models.
Yeah. And then he's like, guys, we ought to really just run just small games. We're not getting serious. And I'm pretty sure this was all part of his plan in the long run. He's like, just buy a start collecting box. Here's your options. And so I'm looking through them, and just instantly I was drawn to the Seraphon. And I don't know if it's the, childhood love of dinosaurs, probably so. If you're my age, Jurassic Park was seminal in your childhood. And so that T-Rex Carnosaur looking thing was just, I've got to run that. And
there's nothing like the Velociraptors coming at the kids in the kitchen, or even Dennis Nedry getting that what is it, getting that spit kind of thrown out. It's almost like the salamander's just like, why that's ran into attacks now, because he see that scene is just causing absolute terrors in Jurassic Park.
Absolutely. So that was what got me hooked right there. So I bought, I think, one start collecting, and once I got that built and started painting, I was like, okay, I'm in, and just started buying more. And we have 4 guys that play just about every week, and we've tried to keep that up during COVID, trying to stay safe, but go to each other's houses and play. And eventually we kind of reached out and we saw that there's a really good community here in Dallas, Texas, and they would run local tournaments every month. So we'd be able to go up to our local store, Texas Toy Soldiers, and play every month. And then there's a Texas Masters scene, which is the grand tournaments. We have 4 of those a year, and there's a whole ranking system and a finals, a Masters challenge that you get to go to. And so once I saw that, the competitive juices just started flowing. I'm like, okay, I'm in this. It's not too much of a commitment to go, once a month and play a tournament. It's a ton of fun. And so that's how I got hooked. We played. 2019 was a really fun year for the Texas Masters scene. It was really rocking and kicking, but we're kind of on a break because of COVID. But hopefully it'll get kicked up again here.
I'm in your group. I'm in your Dallas, Texas group, not because I'm from there, but I had seen the amazing community that you guys had built in the different regions, and how you kind of brought the different regions together and getting some competitive juices flowing, but also having fun. You've obviously got the Warhammer Citadel as well. So a lot of cool things happening in Texas if you are in the area, if you want to get involved in the area. But you've got drawn by the Seraphon because the Venus flytrap asked you to start building. You got drawn to start building a force, and here you are with a YouTube channel talking all things Seraphon. So if I want to learn about Seraphon, and let's say I'm new, well, let's say I am drawn because of the Jurassic Park aesthetic. I love the idea of dinosaurs and these skinks and the Mayan Aztec kind of aesthetic, or there's something in this army that is drawing me and I want to paint them. From a gaming side, let's talk high-level strengths. What are they good at?
It's kind of an interesting army because it's with the new battle tome. It's very diverse, and so you can, whatever your play style is, there's almost something you can specialize in Seraphon that way. If you really like melee, you can do melee. If you really want to do shooting, there's lots of shooting. If you want to dominate in that magic phase, you could do that too. And so I think that one of the strengths of Seraphon is that if you're building an army, you can go one of any way that you want to. And that's also something, your opponent, if they see that you're playing Seraphon, they may not exactly know what to expect because they can get hit with anything. There's mobility, there's tankiness. It's pretty awesome how wide that battle tome is, and that you can play it pretty much any way you want to.
Yeah, I'm seeing in the chat some people are almost like crying. They're like, Seraphon's good at everything. I think it's probably worth calling out that they have the tools to do everything. Yep. It's not to say that in every build they're going to be awesome at shooting, combat, magic, battle shock, movement. Yeah. Like they're not good at everything in every list. But like Cities of Sigmar, like a few other battle tomes out there, Stormcast Eternals, because of the depth, you do have utility to be able to build a shooting list, to be able to build a combat list, a magic list, a fast movement. You can teleport around. So you have tools.
And when, one of the funny things when this battle tome first came out, this new one, there were a lot of tears online, because if you look at just the war scrolls for some of these units, they're not impressive. I know previous to this battle tome, I played a lot of Shadow Strike, which was a lot of Ripperdactyls, and I supported it with a lot of Razordons. Well, both of those, you're probably not even going to see those on the table now in this new battle tome, because those they're just not very good now.
No, I haven't seen any Pterodons or Ripperdactyls yet. I also haven't seen any Bastillodons, despite everyone losing their minds at the 1+ armor save of Bastillodons. I'm yet to see anyone running it around. So sometimes we have boogeymen that aren't quite real.
Yeah, and you see on a lot of these war scrolls that they're not that impressive when you first look at them. But this army is all about synergies, and so you layer synergies on top of synergies on top of synergies, and all of a sudden these things are going to be putting out a lot of output, or they're going to be tanking a lot of stuff. And so it's a wide book, but it's also a pretty deep book in that if you just throw in a bunch of models out there, you're probably going to lose. You have to really work on those synergies in this army, unless you're just throwing out a bunch of salamanders. If you just max out salamanders, they are really good. So there are some strong units in the army, and salamanders is one of those.
Don't. My advice would be don't over-invest into salamanders.
No.
You may get burnt in the next FAQ.
Yeah.
So I've got the list. So we're going to go through the allegiance abilities. We're going to go through some of the particular parts of the battle tome when it comes to Coalesced, because we obviously Starborn. We can talk at Starborn somewhere else, but I want to talk Coalesced. So what do I get by being Seraphon compared to just being even like Grand Alliance Order? So we've got Warriors of the Star and the Realms. So that is just having to choose whether it's going to be Coalesced or Starborn. Can I choose not to do that?
Yeah. So when you're choosing your army, you're going to go either Coalesced or Starborn. You have to choose one of those, and they play pretty wildly different, and they have a lot of different abilities. And so that Starborn is a lot more about that mobility, the movement, the teleporting, the summoning. It's kind of what you see in the old Seraphon book. In Coalesced, it's all about monsters. It's about kind of reducing damage. It's about the Saurus wing of Seraphon. So a lot of times, you can almost split it up into Skinks is Starborn and Saurus is Coalesced. It's kind of how it breaks down.
The next rule you're going to get is the contemplation. I've had coffee in my mouth, is all sticky, of the ancient ones. Basically, at the end of the hero phase, you can pick one friendly Slan and replace the spell that they know. So,
this is good because it just gives you flexibility. So on your Slan or Croak, they're both keyworded to the Slan there. So you can choose to swap out your lore spell, which is pretty good. The lore spell isn't that great. There's really only about 2 spells I would take, maybe 3 depending on the list. But this allows you to, if you start with one spell and it's not going to be effective versus your opponent, to just switch it to something else. So quite good.
Yeah, great versatility.
Yep.
And then finally when you go Seraphon, you got one final thing, and then when we go Coalesced, you get a whole bunch more. Mm-hmm. So the last thing you're going to get is the this sacred, was it Astrums?
Mm-hmm.
Astrums. So basically, at the start of your hero phase, you pick one of the following until the next hero phase. So you've got the Great Drake, you've got the Shield, the Hunter Steed, and then the Sage Staff, which is a whole bunch of things. Was it? At the end of combat, pick one friendly enemy Seraphon hero, +1 attack. You can +1 to the run, roll, and charge rolls, or you can one friendly Seraphon wizard. You can add +1 to cast and dispelling.
And this is all part of that flexibility that Seraphon has, where if you just put it on one and stick on it, that's not really what it's designed for. So this is a buff that you just change at the start of your hero phase, depending on what you need. And so they're all useful, and I tend to end up using all of them in a game. A lot of times you'll want to start off with some heavy casting with Croak or your Slán. And so you're going to pick the Sage's Staff so that you have that +1. And it's +1 to casting, dispelling, and unbinding as well. So it's pretty nice in that it kind of gives you that extra +1. Slans and Croaks are naturally +1. And so you can really do a lot in the magic phase to kind of determine the flow of the game. But once you get stuck in combat, you probably want to switch it over to one of the other ones, like the Great Drake, to where one of your heroes is really hitting a lot harder because they do get +1 to their melee weapons. Hunter Steed is good just to give you extra speed, especially in Starborn. This is pretty awesome, but also in Coalesced, I end up using this a lot too because you get +1 to run and charge, and there's a lot of ways that you can run and still charge, so it effectively gives you +2 by the time that's over.
Which is awesome. Yeah, that's great. So there's definitely a lot of versatility. I know us Squeak fans are really excited about White Dwarf. We've just gotten the Jaws of Mork that gives us +1 at that damage. We're like, yay, this is so awesome. So being able to get some additional attacks, being able to improve the ability to charge and run, obviously that can stack with cogs. There's some other ways you can really boost that number up. Yeah. You mentioned the Sage Staff as well. So you can start to see some of the synergies and start some of the ways you can really take advantage of these rules. Then we drill down a little further and say, right, well, I'm going to choose Starborn and I'm going to choose Coalesced. So for the purpose of this video, we're only going to focus on Coalesced. So Coalesced comes with a whole bunch more. So tell me more what I'm going to get for my Coalesced buck.
So in Coalesced, you're going to get what's listed here, but the first one is the Cold-Blooded. And so with that Cold-Blooded, this one is kind of an interesting rule. So it says it ignores modifiers, positive or negative, to bravery characteristics of Coalesced. And so this is kind of nice if you're facing a bravery debuffing list that's just going to kill your bravery on these things, but it can also hurt you. It's kind of strange because you don't get a bravery modifier for hordes. And so the hordes, when you have more than 10 units in a 10 models in a unit, you get +1 to your bravery for every 10. Well, that modifies your bravery characteristic, which this won't let you do. So you have to be cognizant of that in Coalesced, in that if I'm taking a horde, you don't get that horde bonus for bravery. And so you can get really killed by bravery sometimes, especially if you're taking like a unit of skinks in Coalesced, which they're still good in Coalesced, but they have a bravery of 5 when you're playing them in Coalesced. And so they can run pretty quick if you're not careful because of this Cold-Blooded rule. We've also got Predatory Fighters. And so we add 1 to the attack characteristics of your jaw weapons. And this is nice because just about everything in the army has a jaw melee profile. And so this just gives you a blanket 1 extra attack on all those jaws. And so this is just a pretty cool little function here, but it helps you raise that output on your army.
I get excited about that one because you can put like +1 attack on something like a Dread Saurian, which is already an absolute combat monster. And then you're just like, cool, +1 attack. Yeah,
absolutely. It also helps with Carnosaurs who have their jaw attack does a lot of damage. So that can make them a lot more dangerous as well. Another one, Primeval Domain. And so this affects the terrain that's in your territory. Basically, you don't take any of the negative effects from the terrain that are in your territory. If you play with terrain features a lot, this one will help you as you won't get punished for those ones that are in your territory. So not a bad rule. Pretty nice if you roll wrong on the terrain table.
So you're going to be able to take a part of a Damned, because Damned is an optional. You don't have to take Damned, but it's there. Arcane gives you the magic. Inspiring gives you the bravery. Mystical as well, so you can still take advantage of that cool stuff. But things like Deadly and Sinister, you get to ignore. So that's really handy, especially even determining which side of the table you're on. You could take something that has Deadly and not worry about it, or you could give it to your opponent and just laugh in their face.
Yep, absolutely. And the last one, and probably most important for Coalesced, is Scaly Skin. Subtract 1 from the damage inflicted for each successful attack that targets a Coalesced unit to a minimum of 1. So this right here is where they get a lot of their toughness. And so this is absolutely brutal against something like ogres or trolls or these elite units that put out 2 damage attacks or 3 damage attacks. This will just, it cuts them down to scale. So it's quite powerful as part of their tankiness. Now they FAQ'd it doesn't affect mortal wounds. So if you have mortal wounds coming in you from whatever they come at you, magic or shooting or melee things that proc mortals, that won't affect that. You'll still take all those, but regular attacks will subtract 1 from the damage. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, that's sweet. That's sweet. I think we're starting to kind of build a bit of a theme here. We're starting to understand a little bit about where this army is going to go. And I can't wait to wrap around your thoughts on how to build a list that's going to take advantage of the coalesced rules.
Mm-hmm.
Any final thoughts before we get into, because I've got a burning question, and that is the question I get often asked is around terrain placement, because one of the cool things that you guys get is you get a piece of terrain. And allegiance-based terrain. And sometimes for people, it's very hard to understand where to put it on the table because they don't want to make a bad decision, being that this has a large base as well, which makes it difficult to know where you want to put it and where you want to take advantage. So what are your thoughts and how do you take advantage of as a coalesced force with the Realm Shaper engine terrain piece?
So the Realm Shaper engine is kind of interesting. It goes down after you've set up the objectives, but before you set up terrain. So you put it down before you set up terrain, kind of like the Bone Tithe Nexus. And then you set up the rest of the table around it. So you have a couple things that you need to ask yourself on, where I put this. Because you don't know which side you're going to get. Now, in the new GHB, they have this little rule for setting up the table where you roll and whoever rolls highest is player A, whoever rolls lowest is player B, and player A sets up the terrain, player B chooses their side. And this actually helps us a lot for this Realm Shaper engine, because if you're player A and you're setting up terrain, you know that you're not going to get to pick the side. If you're player B and they're setting up the terrain, you put your terrain down piece first and they set up their terrain, you know which side you're going to pick. And so you have to weigh that in. If you don't know which side you're going to choose, like if the other person is going to be selecting the territory, then you need to ask yourself a couple questions. Do I want this in the middle to just cause problems? Do I want to set it up in a way that I can use it if it's on my side, but he also gets my opponent will also get the advantage of using it, because this Realm Shaper engine can be garrisoned. And so it can be garrisoned by anybody, even your opponent. Yeah. And so it can help out your opponent, which is kind of strange.
I was just about to say that it can benefit you as well, your opponent as well. So they can garrison. So I could put like a nice little block of handgunners in there. I could put like a hero that I wanted to avoid. Obviously, there's some stuff that comes with it, but they're very much like the Deepkin boats. You could use it offensively. You could use it defensively. Or you could just put it in the center of the board and not have to worry and just be a pain in the butt, like the Bone Tithe Nexus.
Mm-hmm. There is, and you'll see, this is some like high level strategy here, but yeah, there's some people who like to put it in the very corner of the board and put their Slaawn behind it, not in it, and then put some throwaway unit inside of it, because when you're garrisoned in there, nobody can come within 3 inches, kind of like the normal unit movement of your guys. And so it makes your Slaawn or your Croak extremely hard to get to if he's back in the back corner. There's only a small little narrow pathway to get beside this thing to your Slaawn. So you can do something like that. If you know you're going to choose your side, put it in a place where you want to deploy your wizards into it, because it does have a decent bonus on it. And if you have a wizard in it or a priest, you can choose a piece of terrain on the table, and it'll do mortals around it to the enemy units. And depending on how far it is from you, it depends on the roll. The further away from it is, you have to roll higher to make it do mortals. But it can give you some output that's further away from you, all the way up to as far as you want on the board. But you'd still have to roll a 6 for that to happen. But it gives you some ranged mortals if you deploy your guy into it. I have seen some people do some goofy stuff, like put a Bastildon in it, so it's kind of almost like a pillbox or something that's just sitting there on the table shooting things.
It's worth noting as well that it's only Seraphon wizards and Seraphon priests that can activate that mortal wound from range. It's, you know, if it falls into my side, which is the enemy side, and I do garrison a wizard on there, I don't get to do that. It is only Seraphon based wizards. So just for anyone who might play it and go, oh, cool, there's a Realm Shaper engine in my side of the board. No, you can't use it. It's only Seraphon. I love the idea of putting something like Chameleon Skinks in there and just being a jerk, because regardless, you can put Chameleon Skinks anywhere on the board. So even if it does go into your enemy territory, you've still got some shenanigans, and you're being a distraction card effects with what, 100-odd point unit of salamanders, not salamanders, Chameleon Skinks.
And the Chameleon Skinks get a big bonus if they're in cover, so that's an excellent unit to put into it if it's on the enemy's side of the board. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, let's talk about your list, not my lists. Anything else you want to talk about with Realm Shaper Engine, or should we get into two lists? And you've been really kind to share with me two different lists. You've both given me a Coattails Claw and a Thunder Lizard. So excited to look at both.
One thing before we leave, like allegiance abilities, and it's not mentioned in the actual abilities, but it's mentioned later on the War Scrolls. But I think one of the most important things that Seraphon has is bound endless spells, and so they get a rule.
How did we miss that? How did we miss that?
It's not listed up there. It's listed. It's listed like a page or two prior, just in small text somewhere. So it's
a tiny little spot that you might miss in the book, but it actually is amazing. And there's one rule that I wish as a Cities of Sigmar player I had. It grinds my gears that I don't have it. But yes, tell me about boundless endless spells.
So they, a while back they came up with these things called endless spells, which are these physical spells that you put on the board and you can move around. And they pointed them specifically because some of them can only be used by you and moved by you or not moved. And then some are controlled by both of you, and you take turns and it can come back to hurt you and all this kind of stuff. And some of them are pretty powerful. Seraphon pays a 10-point penalty onto those. So 10 extra points, and only we can move them. So this is amazing for some of the endless spells. Some of them it's useless, like never take a bound Balewind Vortex, but a bound Purple Sun or a bound Geminids.
See, I disagree with the bound Balewind Vortex.
Yeah?
Because if you're Starborn, I know if you're Starborn, there is a spell that allows you to spell all the endless spells on the table.
True.
So if you still had a bound endless spell, it means you'd stay there with Croak on the Balewind while everything else around you is gone. But that's like a nuance if you build that way.
Absolutely. But yeah, these are extremely powerful. You can cast, a Geminids, and it can go across the board, and then you just drag it back and forth all game in their ranks and wreak havoc. And so and you're paying an extra 10 points to ensure that these things never come back and hurt you.
So for anyone who's quite new or hasn't quite played with endless spells, what Caleb's talking about is predatory spells. So if you look on the War Scroll, there's a whole bunch of them that are known as predatory. So predatory ones are controlled neutrally the round after they're cast. So if I cast it in round 1, at the top of round 2, before we determine who goes first, basically what happens is when you roll priority, the person who goes second moves the first endless spell. So they basically become neutral assets. And what Caleb's talking about here is if I cast Geminids, and Geminids is one that's a really good example because you get 2 of these little models, and when they touch an opponent or go past an opponent's unit, they do D3 mortal wounds. There's a potential in this particular endless spell for 60-odd points is that you can do 2d3 mortal wounds, plus one is going to be -1 to hit, and the other one will be -1 to their attacks. The 60 points. For an additional 10 points, as we currently stand in the General's Handbook 2020, it means that those Geminids cannot come against you. So you can just keep going forward, keep popping opponents. As Haywo and Twitch in the chats mentioned, things like Purple Sun, things like even Emerald Lifeswarm, you could stop it from going into your opponent and healing them up. Things like Quicksilver Swords. There's so many of those predatory endless spells that you might go, right, well, I'm going to stay control of this. And it is all a reward, 0 risk.
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, there's spells that you probably kind of shy away from in a lot of lists because you don't want them coming back on you. And here in Seraphon, we say, 10 points, no risk.
And there's one endless spell that you've got in your list that I really love that I wish that I could use more often, because it's one that you don't see you don't see very often, but because it's bound, it makes complete sense. It's like a free command point every turn, and it's cheaper than a command point. So I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go through the Coattails Claw. The first list we're going to go through is the Coattails Claw. Do you just want to give me a high-level overview of what you're tapping into here with Coattails Claw?
So Coattails Claw is definitely the list for Saurus. This is where you want your source, because all your source units, when they charge, they get a +1 to hit. And that's kind of the general idea of this list. And in Coattails Claw, you basically get a free Aether Quartz Brooch. On a 4-up, you get your command point back. And so you're going to be recycling command points, which this army spends like crazy. So you need command points. But the source become a lot better in this list, because charging, they get +1 to their hits. And they need it because their War Scrolls, a lot of them don't have great hit values. And so getting +1 to their hit is pretty good. Is very good. So that's kind of what this list is designed around. We need source, and we want them to be charging. You do have to take a source general to get that Aether Quartz Brooch, basically that dominant predator, onto your general. So you have to make sure he's the general.
And by the way, you're just like grinding people's gears right now, because we've lost Aether Quartz Brooch in general. So it's basically like you get a free artifact that's not available to anyone else now. But basically, for anyone who doesn't remember Aether Quartz Brooch, when you spend a command point, you regenerate them on a 5+. So you're going to be able to get more command points.
Yep. Yeah, we lost Aether Quartz. Before we did that, I actually ran Aether Quartz and Dominant Predator, and I think I had like 14 command points at one point.
Legion of Grief do the same thing. They basically do double ups, but you can't do that anymore. Cry.
Yeah. Yep.
You've got your so we've got Dominant Predator. So on a 4+, you get that extra command point, and then the Artifact of Power. So pick one of the bearer's melee weapons. If the unmodified hit roll for the attack is a 6, you inflict 2 mortal wounds in addition to the normal damage. That's brutal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we want this. You'll pretty much always see this on a Scar veteran on Carnosaur, because they have 6 attacks on his spear, and so it's a decent one to put it on to get some extra mortal wounds out. There's not really anything in our list that has like an absurd number of attacks from the hero. We get a lot of attacks from mounts and stuff, and so this artifact is nice. It's nothing that's going to be crazy, but it'll get you some mortal wounds out.
Reminds me a lot of the squig builds that I do in Gloomspite, and especially, again, I mentioned the Jaws of Mork that have just come out. You're really trying to super enhance those bites. Those bite damages often do a lot more damage than the riders do, so it's looking at ways you can really take advantage. And again, the Dread Saurian, I keep calling it out. It's a model that you may not have seen before, team. It is a Forge World model. It is one of the biggest models around. I think only surpassed by the Corn Dragon, but damn, it's imposing. I think I saw someone build a list and share it with me the other day. It was like 4 Dread Saurians, at least 3, if not 4. It was brutal. Yeah,
it's pretty nice, and especially in Coalesced, because he'll get, or in Thunder Lizard. I'm sorry, he'll have 37 wounds, doing -1 damage, and there's ways to heal him, and there's ways to get him +1 to his save. I mean, Dread Saurians can be quite fun.
That's the terror you put on the board.
Yeah.
List number 1. So we've got a Legion's ability, Seraphon. We've got the Constellation of Coattails Claw, the rules that we've just spoken about. And what I'll do is I'll read out the list, and then we can kind of break it down a little bit and explain to me why you made the choices that you made, whether it's, for example, the Saurus Scarvet. Why did you take that version as opposed to another version on a Carnosaur? We'll talk through some of the logic. So from a leader's choice, we've got Lord Croak with the Stellar Tempest. We have the Saurus Scar veteran on Carnosaur, who is the general with the command trait of Dominant Predator, has the War Spear, and has Inviscerating Blade as the artifact. We also have another Saurus Scar veteran on Carnosaur with the War Spear. We have 2 Skink Star Priests, both with Hand of Glory. So you've really doubled up here on the spell casting. So talk me through some of your leader choices. What's the logic behind it all?
So Lord Croak is I want to say he's an automatic add to every list. He's not necessarily, but it's close. He's pointed quite well. You'll see a lot of people complain that he is well undercosted. In a lot of lists, I think you see he's not going to be doing a ton of damage. And this is one of those lists where he's not going to be doing a ton of damage. He's there for support. He does get to roll 3 dice in your hero phase. And on 4-ups, he's going to give you an extra command point. And so he's going to be generating command points. He does have 4 casts that he can cast. And so he can do a board-wide comet. And basically, you pick D3 or D6 units and do D3 mortals to them. So this is when you kind of see people complain about Lord Croak, that he has a potential to do 18 mortal wounds from that one spell. And generally, I find I do 2 to 4 wounds with that mortals on the board. Now that's enough to you're killing off support heroes turn 2 or 3 with basically no effort, and so that can really frustrate some people. But in a lot of lists, you're taking him as support. There are ways that you can pump this dude up to give him a lot of damage, but you're going to invest an extra 600 points in this guy if you're gonna be clearing somebody's army with Lord Croak. So in this role, he's support. He's generating command points, and he's trying to take out those support heroes on the other team.
I'm going to ask a loaded question here, because I think you've just made a very divisive comment about the points value of Croak. Do you think the value that you get out of Lord Croak is increased in a Starborn list, and you feel that Lord Croak is appropriately costed in a Coalesced? I just want to clarify your point, because I think some people will be sitting here thinking they've seen the raw damage potential. And yes, there's a whole bunch of things you got to do to kind of really supercharge Croak. You're getting the Ashlith Bearer, you're getting, there's a whole bunch of things you got to add to get Croak to where he's doing super damage.
Yeah. So I've played a ton with Lord Croak, and I'll tell you, probably a lot of bad feelings happen when you charge him. You get stuck in combat, and then he's just going to blow up everything within 10 inches of him. Unless you're specifically building the army to do damage from Lord Croak, he's really just support there. And he's going to be great support. He's going to make up his points with command points that he's making back. And so that's not – I think he's still pointed low probably for Coalesced because he's generating so many command points. So he is going to be worth it, I think, in both lists. He probably is better in Starborn for sure, but we need him in this list just for his raw command point generation.
And by the way, there's absolutely nothing wrong with what I just said, or asking this question. And it's hard to do because, again, I'll use my Cities of Sigmar reference. The Hurricanum, right? The Hurricanum is like 300 odd points. I think it's 320. It's like maybe even 280. Like it's something around the 300 point mark. And it's a good little support wagon. It gives you +1 to cast, +1 to hit. It has one cool spell. But then it gets completely supercharged when it's in Hallow Heart. And then you get the additional spell. You get the being able to add +D6 to a cast. Like there's some crazy stuff that happens.
Yeah.
And it's hard to point an allegiance ability. And we learned that very quickly with Hagnar from Daughters of Cain. It's like, how do you point Hagnar versus a Daughters of Cain build in any other fashion? How do you point Petrifix Elite versus everything else? Because Mortek Guard are just so much better in PE than they were in Mortis Praetorian. But this is not the points discussion. This is not General's Hand, but we don't have any influence.
Yeah.
But I know some people will be sitting here. I think you get good value out of Croak, probably even more so in Starborn.
So one of the biggest arguments for his point cost is statistically he will do 2 mortal wounds turn 1. Is that worth 320? I mean, I think that's worth 320. You have to put a lot more into him to get a lot more damage turn 1. So take it what you will. It is very divisive, his points cost. So there's lots of arguments online about how much he costs.
It's all good. It's all good. We're not gonna like. It's all good. We won't spend too much time on points. And points change so often as well. But we got Lord Croak. Did you explain what Stellar Tempest does?
Stellar Tempest is basically a horde busting spell. So it has 24 inches on the range. So it's got great range. you're not really going to be able to cast it turn 1. But once you get a horde in range, you roll a dice for each model in that unit, and on a 5-up, it takes a mortal. So great at helping you clear hordes out. A lot of times I'll end up, turn 2, if they don't have any hordes, I'll switch that over to like the healing spell. So he can heal. It's just 1 wound to a unit, but it kind of helps bring somebody back up if they're hurting.
So really what we're looking at here is if you're building a Starborn, you're likely using Lord Croak as one of your damage dealing, I guess, offensive weapons. In a Coalesced, really you're building around your monstrous cavalry. You're looking for those bites, and Lord Croak probably plays more of a support buff piece as opposed to being the primary damage dealer.
He's your command point generator, because you really want command points to spend from your general. You're going to be spending quite a few command points in this list, and so you really want all the command points you can get, and Croak helps that out.
Next up, we've got that Sora Scar Veteran on Carnosaur. So you've got 2. One is your general, one isn't your general, both equipped with the War Spear. Talk to me about why one is your general, and there's no battalion in this particular build, is there?
No, there's not.
No, so which is why we have the artifacts, because that is the Coattail's Claw command trait and the artifact.
Yeah, and there it's a good command trait. I like this for this list. And you talk a lot about power pairs. You have this guy to support these units, and so this Scar Veteran really supports our Source Knights that are down there. And the Scar Veteran, why do you choose that versus the Old Blood? The Old Blood's command trait gives you a +1 to hits. Scar Veteran gives the hit of 6 on a unit will turn into another hit. And so the Source Knights, which is what these guys are going to be supporting, don't benefit as much from that extra +1 to hit, because if they're charging, which is what you want the Knights to be doing, they're already getting a +1. Another +1, actually, you can't take one of their attacks any lower. It would already be at a 2-up for the Cold One's bite. And so we don't get as much play out of that as we do the Scar Veteran, where we want those to explode. We're going to be rolling lots of dice out of the Source Knights, and so we want that 6 to explode into more attacks as well. He is taking the War Spear that gives him 6 attacks, and hopefully we can hit that Eviscerating Blade, which gives him some mortals onto those. And then the same thing for that next hero. He's a Scar Veteran as well. He has that same command ability, and he's going to be paired up with the other Source Knights as kind of 2 pairs, two units that are going to be advancing up the board.
Why not both? Why not? Because obviously you've taken 2 Scar Vets. Why not take one of each?
You can. I think this list, we just didn't quite have enough points. The Old Blood is about 20 points more. He got cheaper, and I like him a lot. And in Source lists that focus on warriors, I end up taking him a lot more, because the warriors can benefit more from that +1. But here in this list, we have other ways to get to his +1. In fact, the command trait that goes with Coattail's Claw is a +1. So you can just get his same command ability for free, basically. You don't have to take him if you don't want to.
And by the way, all we're doing here, folks, is looking at a couple of different lists, breaking it down. And if you are, you want to die on a hill and say that the particular, build or a particular monster or a particular whatever, you want to put the Dread Saurian in here, for example, you can now look at this, go, right, well, I really like this particular build. I would drop the guard and then, boost that up to be a different type of, whatever. Yeah, I think you kind of get my point here.
Absolutely.
The flexibility here shows you off a framework, and then you tweak and tailor, or go, I don't really like this, and I wouldn't take the Purple Sun, so I would rather X, and that gives me more points, so I do this.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not. I'm not trying to build the net list of net lists here. This is a fun list in Coattail's Claw where I have lots of dinosaurs riding dinosaurs, and we're having fun in this list. I think it can be good. But this is Coattail's Claw. You're taking this to have a lot of fun with Source. So
you've got 2 Skink Star Priests, both with the Hand of Glory. So the Hand of Glory is casting value of 6. If successfully cast, pick 1 friendly unit wholly within 18 of the caster. Until your next hero phase, you can reroll hit rolls of 1 for the attacks made by that unit.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we've got 2 non-Source units here. These heroes, and these heroes are fantastic. that you'll see them in just about every Seraphon list, I think, these Star Priests, because they have an automatic buff. They just point their staff at a unit, and that unit will do mortals on wound rolls of 6. And so it's very good if you're going to be rolling lots of dice. And so I'm going to be pairing both of these Star Priests up with that unit of Source Knights and Scar Veterans to buff those Knights up as we send them off to glory. They do have a spell Hand of Glory, which is reroll hit rolls of 1. You can get that with a command point if the spell doesn't go off, but it gives you some extra spell casters here in this list. Also of note, if once you advance them up the board, turn 2 or 3, once these these Star Priests are in the mix, you can cast Croak's spell through them if they're within range. So.
And by the way, you can't cast Hand of Glory twice. No. For anyone who might be wondering, it's there for redundancy. Absolutely. The other one obviously is there to cast their signature spell on their War Scroll.
The skink spells they're not the best. They do. I love Hand of Glory. I'll take it. They have a couple that are decent, but I like having that redundancy for these Source Knights in this list.
And obviously you've got 3 endless spells as well. So one could cast Hand of Glory, one could throw out an endless spell. So I guess my point for any new Seraphon player is you couldn't cast Hand of Glory twice. You're there to choose the best unit to put on the table, depending on how the battle's going.
And their native spell is actually pretty good. It'll do -1 to hit for an enemy unit. So also good to. You've got a lot of options with these Star Priests here. They kind of fulfill a lot of roles. They're going to be they're going to be targeted by your enemy pretty quickly. So that's why I have 2 of them out there.
I can see we've got some really excited people in the chat here, like Anthony Pulcastro, absolute 3D printing master, but also one of the best Seraphon players I know as well. Just a gentle giant. I love him. But he's mentioning in the chat as well, the Starseer for 3d6 charge and giving a +1 armor save as well. So again, this is kind of where you can take part of the framework and then build in your own version of it, which is great to see. Yeah,
there is the battalions in Seraphon are kind of hit and miss. I really only ever take one of them, but the fire lance is for the Knights, and I considered putting that in this list because they get +3 to their charge when they're around the hero from that battalion. And if you take a Starseer, you can then be charging from forever away, especially if you put in the constellation that gives them +1 to their charge. So there are some combos here where you can shoot these Knights all the way across the board and get them into the enemy's lines pretty quick.
Anything else you'd mention from a hero point of view?
No, that's it. I think that's it for the heroes.
So then the units you've come in with. So you've got a unit of 10 Saurus Knights with Lancers, 10 Saurus Knights with Lancers, 5 Saurus Guard, 20 Saurus Warriors with Spears, 20 Saurus Warriors with Spears. And I did allude to the fact you've got endless spells. You've got 3 of those. So you've got Bound Purple Sun, you've got Bound Malevolent Maelstrom, Bound Geminids. So let's go to the units first.
So the Saurus Knights are, I think, kind of a sleeper unit here. I think they're quite good. Now, none of their attacks have rend, so you got to keep that in mind. There are going to be some lists that these guys will just bounce right off of and do no damage. But in Coalesced, each Saurus Knight is going to be doing 7 attacks each because they have their normal weapon, and then they have a bite from the Saurus guy, the Saurus warrior, the Saurus Knight riding it, and then bites from the cold ones. And both of those bites get that +1 jaw attack. And so each one is going to be putting out 7 attacks. So this unit, if you can get them all in, is going to be doing 70 dice at your opponent. If you get the right bonuses that we talked about earlier, that should average about 40 damage on a 4-up save. So once you get these guys into combat, they can do some pretty impressive damage for only 200 points. You do have to invest the right synergies. So remember that. If you don't put the right synergies into these guys, you're not going to be doing much damage. But with the mortals from the Skink Star Priest, with the exploding dice from the Scar Veteran, then you can do some damage. Of note, they do need to be charging because they get that +1 from Kotal's Claw, and then also on their War Scroll, they do 2 damage for their lances when they charge, so that they get a little bit better. But you will have to worry about
You've also got the War Drummer that lets you re-roll the charge. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, just about all source units have a banner of some sort and a musician. The musician lets you re-roll charges just for free. So that's kind of nice in that you don't have to ever worry about spending command points on that. And then the banner gives -1 to bravery for enemy units that are within range of it. They can't stack, unfortunately, but a nice little bonus if you're going to make somebody run away.
Maybe a question or a thought for people is I'm looking at the Saurus Knight War Scroll, and their movement is only 8. And from a cavalry point of view, that's not as fast as maybe what I would think of as cavalry. Would you consider maybe putting in a chronomatic cogs, for example, to kind of increase that speed, or do you find that the 8 is enough for you?
When I play them, I'm not trying to alpha strike these guys. A lot of times I'm going to put these warrior screens up, let them absorb the hit, and then counter charge with these knights. And so I don't think they're designed for the alpha charge or the alpha strike. You can, though. Like I said, if you do cogs, if you do the constellation to run and charge, if you do Fire Lance Battalion, these guys can easily, and a Starseer, these guys can easily make it across the table. So on the War Scroll, they're pretty slow, and I think they're supposed to be kind of a counter charger unit, not really an alpha strike speed cavalry type of thing.
No, and the minus not having any rend does tell you that. I'm comparing this mentally in my mind with again, Cities of Sigmar, my Drakespawn Knights. My Drakespawn Knights do have rend, but they don't put out 7 attacks.
Yeah,
that's a lot. That's a lot. So you're going with a weight of dice, and this is kind of where re-rolling ones to hit or adding pluses to attacks, they really just going to absolutely overwhelm your opponent, and especially like +1 damage as well. That's insane.
And a lot of and you're going to get a lot of damage from the Star Priest buff because you're throwing so many dice. You're looking for the wound roll of 6, and you've got a good hit roll on all of these because you're getting +1. You're going to hopefully get the reroll 1s from the spell. So you're going to get a lot of those hit dice through. Now you're looking for 6s from the Star Priest to do mortals. And so that's the way to kind of get around that no rend is we're going to have them do mortals as well.
Quick question: why the lances instead of the blades?
I've math hammered it out, and the difference between them isn't that much when they're just stuck in combat, because we can get so many pluses to hit different ways. And the lances will double up the damage when you're charging. So I just like the lances better. I want these guys charging. That's kind of what Codal Claw is designed to do. So
yeah, I agree. I would always go lances because you are building around a charging list. You are building around getting in, and you want to basically that lance is going to support the charge. While swords are more consistent, you find. They're not rewarding you from what you're kind of already doubling down on. Yeah.
Our Source Guard is next, and that's just, these Source Guard, you'll see them a lot. I'll probably see them in most Seraphon lists. A single unit of 5 Source Guard, and they're there to just absorb wounds from your Slann or your Croak. And that's to make sure your Slann or Croak doesn't get alpha shot off the table turn 1. They when they're within range, 3 inches of the Lord Croak, on a 2-up, they can absorb the wound instead of him. And so it's just a way to keep some of those wounds off of him. These are great to put inside your Realm Shaper engine with your Slann or Croak. They have enough wounds that they can fit inside there with your caster as well.
So they're certainly the bodyguard. Do they always just follow the Slann around and just protect the Slann?
Yeah, pretty much. You can use them to cap an objective later in the game if you've gotten rid of their long strike threats. If they don't have any shooting or magic that you're worried about, feel free to do whatever you want to with them. There, if somebody's in melee with Croak, he might already be dead unless you get a chance to shoot off all his close range spells.
And then finally, you've got 2 units of 20 Saurus warriors, both with spears.
Yep. So I'm taking this. This is kind of I've played a lot with Source Warriors lately in big hordes, and they're constantly disappointing me. they are hurt so bad by the unable to get the horde bonus for bravery that I played a game just last weekend where I lost. It was something like 16 in combat, which was heartbreaking, and then I lost another 12 in battle shock, just because I didn't have a command point for them. So that not being able to adjust their bravery from the hordes kind of hurts. So I'm taking them in 20s to make sure they get their bonus. When they're over 15, they get an extra attack, and so that works for both their spears and their bites.
So they go from attack 1 to attack 2. So they're going to get 4 attacks each.
Yeah, I misspoke there. That horde bonus only goes for their spears, but they do get an extra jaw attack for Coalesced. So
sure.
They do
yeah. So you're kind of doubling down. So you've got your order cohort that's going to give you an extra attack to the melee weapon, and then the allegiance ability is going to give you +1 attack because of the bite.
Correct. And I'm splitting them up. You could get them cheaper if you take them as one big horde. But here, they're going to be my either screens if I need them. I put them in front of my knights, advance them up, run them, and then let the knights countercharge whatever clears them. Or I'm just capping objectives with these guys. So they have enough to where they can do some damage on their own a little bit, not a whole lot. But they're really more here for board control, screens, that kind of role. So.
And I imagine you're taking the spears instead of the clubs because the spears have a 2-inch reach, and Wsorran on 32 mil bases.
Yes, yeah.
Which means that if they were on if you're only using 1-inch attacks, it's going to be too hard to I guess attack in multiple ranks. So giving that additional inch is going to give you I guess it means you're not kind of spreading out to try to get all your attacks, or you're not losing as many attacks because you've only got a 1-inch attack.
Yeah, it gives you just a little bit more attacks on there. The swords do give you rend, which is nice, but I'm not taking them for damage. So it really, whichever weapon you want to take is just fine. Yep.
Although in fairness, your jaws are a 1-inch attack as well, so you'll only get the additional spear range.
Correct.
A lot of wounds. You're coming in at 1990. You've got 129 wounds. Talk to me about your 3 endless spell choices. You've got the Purple Sun, you've got Maelstrom, and you've got Geminids, all bound. So they're the ones that can't come back against you.
Yeah, so here, they did, I don't think we talked about it before, but you are limited to 3 endless spells per the last GHB. So a lot of my lists I'll have at least 1, but a lot of times I'll have 3 because that's quite powerful. I'm taking Purple Sun to deal with hordes and with elite units. The Purple Sun can just absolutely wreck these units that are tough. So what you do when you cast this big giant ball of death, any unit that it goes across or lands within an inch of, you roll a dice for however many models are in that unit, and on a 6, they are slain. Not just immortal, they are slain. And so this is pretty powerful for getting rid of those things like Phoenix Guard or Putrid Blight Kings, any of these things that are just like really hard to kill. Fire Slayers, this is an excellent spell to use against those. The other one was
Malevolent Maelstrom.
So this one, I don't know that I've ever seen it on the table in any other list before Seraphon got bound. It may be used every once in a while, but
I see it a lot. I see the Maelstrom being used by non-magic armies. So if like a Deepkin, for example, might have 10 points or 20 points, they'll throw the Maelstrom up, and knowing that Seraphon or Zench or Cities of Sigmar will throw a lot of spells, and they know they can't unbind them. 1, it's going to make it harder to cast. 2, it'll do some damage. But I don't really see it very often in a magic-focused list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, and it's only 20 points, and so it's quite cheap to bring in, and it can get pretty much all the way across the board turn 1, and so it's a good spell to cast turn 1 if you need something over there. And what it does is when you set it up, and the enemy casts any spells, you get an extra unbind to it. So if the spell is cast and not unbound, you get a chance to do an unbind from this thing. And so in this list, it's actually pretty fun because Croak has a +1 to his unbind already, and it's board wide, and you can get him up to +2 if you need to. And So you're already going to have a pretty good unbind. But if that fails, you get another chance with this guy. And so it can really just help you to shut down the magic of the other opponent. And then just as an added bonus there, if you do that, if it does dispel stuff, it'll start racking up points. And you start rolling, and if you roll the correct number based on the points, it can explode into a bunch of mortals. So pretty fun little spell that I don't see very often, but I like it in the bound version, especially for only 20 points.
And because you're not really, I keep saying doubling down, but because you're not focused on the magic like the Starborn equivalent, you're able to you are able to throw that out and not have to worry too much of it, you supercharging it or your spells being re-rolled to cast. So it's a nice little spell. And you know what, if you were to come up against, it's a good utility spell. I do like it.
Yeah. And my third one was Bound Geminids, and
That's
I think we talked about it a second ago, but it's
auto include.
Yeah, it's so good. In this list here, we don't have a lot of Alpha Strike potential here in this list, almost none, other than Croak's board-wide spell. But what I'm doing in this list is I'm trying to get those spells on the board turn 1 and advancing towards the enemy. Maelstrom will get all the way over there. Geminids will get all the way over there. Purple Sun will get about halfway, maybe a little bit more, and then start working on turn 2. And so this isn't a win turn 1 list for sure. This is I'm putting up screens, I'm putting up spells, I'm letting you come to me, then I'm going to hit you with my knights.
This is we're having a good battle. Let's go 5 rounds. Let's have a good old fashioned boxing match.
Yeah.
Not kick them while they're down and burninate them with salamanders.
Yeah.
I like that list. I think, again, the chat has kind of showed off a couple of different ways you could kind of tweak it. I mentioned, you might want to add chronomatic cogs, for example. There are a couple of other heroes we can tweak around. But ultimately, I really like that core. I like the doubling down on the Saurus Knights. I think the big question mark is, do you really need 2 blocks of Saurus Warriors? But as you said, they're screens. And if you don't like them, you could always cut them down. Maybe you might want to have a 20 and then 2 units to 10. There's a lot of flexibility. I mean, you can, in this Seraphon book, you can build lists for days. This isn't just I'm going to type in the best unit and just copy paste. This list is, or this battle tome is so much fun to list build in. It's a lot of fun. Any final comments about the Coattail's Claw, or do we want to get into Thunder Lizard?
I think Source Knights, look into them, guys. I like them.
I do like them. Paul Castro was telling me they look better than Drakespawn Knights. Hard to disagree, although I have converted mine.
Wait. Somebody likes the Source Knight model?
They're saying they're better than the Drakespawn Knights.
I personally like those Drakespawn Knight actual model because that actually looks like a dinosaur. Ours are kind of a little derpy, but they're a fun model still.
Do whatever you want. It's your it's your hobby.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about Thunder Lizard. Thunder Lizard is the second list we're going to explore. So this is a little bit of a different build, and you're going to get different rules compared to the Coattail's Claw. So what do you get for your buck? So first off, you got Mighty Beasts of War, so you add +2 to the wound characteristics for Thunder Lizard monsters. Mm-hmm. So when you take these sub-allegiance, all of your dudes are going to get, or all your gals as well, are going to get the Thunder Lizard keyword. So basically anything that's monster gets +2 to their wound characteristic. So who does this benefit?
This benefits, your Carnosaurs, your Stegodons, your Dreadsaurian, your Bastiladons. All your monsters you're going to be taking. This is going to be the home of the monster list. This is I end up playing Thunderquake a lot or Thunder Lizards a lot because it's just fun to put the big giant dinosaurs on the table. And
this is my list. When this book got revisited, I hoped and prayed to the old ones that I wanted just a monster mash. I didn't even want the monsters to be ridden by skinks or saurus. I'm just give me. I remember in old Warhammer Fantasy there was this feral version of Seraphon where it was all dinosaurs, no handlers. And I'm please give me this. But this is probably the closest I'm going to get with the Thunder Lizards.
Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. It does give you some extra wounds. This really isn't the best ability that they have in Thunder Lizards, but it's nice to give some extra wounds, especially for things that are hard to kill, like Bastiladons and whatnot. the command ability here for Thunder Lizards, this is where your list building decision for Thunder Lizards starts. And so you have this ability here that's pretty interesting, and it can help you play in this meta of extra attacks, extra shoots, out of phase kind of stuff. And so this command ability, at the end of your shooting phase, you get to either pick a Bastildon or a Engine of the Gods that's wholly within 18 of a friendly hero, and you basically get to activate it again. Bastildon, you get to shoot again. Engine of the Gods, you get to roll their Cosmic Engine ability again. And you're going to be spending a lot of command points using this. So these lists need to have ways to get command points, because you're going to be spending probably 2 command points activating different things per turn on this ability. But this is a very valuable ability in Thunder Lizards. I was going to say, you can go, looking at this ability, you can go a couple different ways. And Bastildons are the ones that I think benefit most from this, in that you're going to be looking to utilize this as much as possible with Bastildons. Your Engine of the Gods is going to use it. It's not quite as important, but it does give you an access to some summoning and some heals and some damage from the Engine of the Gods, which I think is a pretty good all-around unit for Thunder Lizards to use.
But that Bastildon is just an absolute tank. So not only does it, and we'll talk about the 1+ armor save. I assume you've got one in your list, but if not, we'll talk about it a little bit later. But just the shooting, I remember even in the old school Seraphon, the very first book, I would often fight 2 Bastildons, and there might be one Engine of the Gods, but there was always 2 Bastildons. So,
and I think if you played Seraphon in the old book and played Thunderquake, this command ability right here uses those same models. You know, you had your Engine of the Gods and usually 2 Bastildons in that Thunderquake list, and you can just slot those right in here. So everything that you had will pretty much work the same way here, or not the same way, but it'll work in this list with this ability. So it's nice that we got that bone from a very popular battalion in the last book will slot right in here.
Your command trait, so the Thunder Lizard General with a monster mount must take the command trait, and that is Prime Warbeast. Add 1 to the attack characteristics of weapons used by the General's mount. So this is not the General, this is the mount.
Correct. So this is one of those things where we were talking about, you know, you got to stack your synergies on top of synergies. So you get an extra attack for all your mounts here. With the Constellation, you can activate another +1 attack for all the mounts, and you get +1 to the jaw attacks. And so there's ways to keep stacking these things on top of it. And there's even a battalion, the Thunderquake Battalion, that'll give you 1 more attack on top of that. And so what may not be a good looking war scroll for a monster, once you add, 3 extra attacks on all those mount profiles, all of a sudden becomes quite scary. So yeah, it's very good, very good. And some books that give you terrible command traits in these sub factions. I generally like most of them that come in this book, and there are ways to get out of it. If for some reason you don't want it, it does require a monster mount. So if for some reason you didn't want to run it this way, you can get out of it by using a different general that doesn't have a monster mount.
Final thing you get is your artifacted power. So in your shooting phase, you get 1 enemy unit within 12 inches of the bearer that's visible. On a 1, the artifact can't be used again for the rest of the battle. Ouch. On a 2 to a 3, nothing happens. Okay. This is not starting very well. On a 4 to a 5, they take D3 mortal wounds, and on a 6, they take D6 mortal wounds. So there's a 50% chance it's doing nothing. There's a 1 in 6 chance that it's going to shut down completely, and then on a 50% chance it's doing D3 mortal wounds, or doing some form of mortal wounds.
Yeah, this is one of those artifacts you kind of wish you could get out of because there's better things, but it can give you some range damage for something that doesn't have it. To be honest, this is there's usually something in your list you constantly forget about, and at least I do. This is that thing. I constantly forget this to roll for this in the shooting because a lot of times I have it on a unit that doesn't have any shooting, so I just totally forget about it. So it can. I mean, the opportunity for D6 mortals wounds at 12 inches, it's not bad. I mean, you got to take it. So
I think it's worthwhile. It reminds me of the Bad Moon for Gloomspite kits, where I'm just like, I'm going to roll that one when I need it, and I'll often forget about it, and I'll have to remind myself constantly. I'll need a token. I'll need something just to remind myself.
Yeah,
because you're right. When you're not in a shooting army, you quickly you get so excited in your movement, then charges that you skip the phase entirely.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Anything else you'd add with Thunder Lizard, or let's get into your list and show me how you've built around these sexy abilities?
I think a lot of times in Thunder Lizard, you'll see primarily one battalion used, and that's Thunderquake. And I think this is where you'll see a lot of Thunder Lizard lists come down, either on Thunderquake, which will have usually a lot of Stegodons in it because they can run and shoot and still charge. So that's where you're going to have a big block of Stegodons shooting up the field. Or you're going to go Bastildons, and it doesn't quite benefit as much from Thunderquake. Bastildons running and shooting is good, but they already have pretty decent range. They have 24-inch range and a 5-inch move, so usually you've got a decent target turn one, and you don't have to worry about it too much. So I kind of come down on those. If you're using Stegodons, a lot of times you'll see Thunderquake used. If you're using Bastildons, it's not really necessary because they don't get a benefit from the extra melee attacks. Bastildons don't. So in this list, we're not going to use a battalion. And I just noticed an error. I did take a Artifact Cloak of Feathers. That should have been Fusel of Conflagration because we're not taking a battalion in this list.
Good shout. So don't at me if you watch this video later. By the way, this video I mentioned in a lot of my faction focuses and talking that there's armies that I really want to start after I do it. This one a monster mash, running Stegodons, running Bastillodons, running just dinosaurs. This is a high risk army for me. So please don't provide too much passion behind the Thunder Lizard build. Because I might go out because I'm in a really weird level right now where I'm getting frustrated about Gargant's not here yet, and I may just lose it and go buy Space Lizards. But Thunder Lizards. So you've taken a Stegodon with a Skink Chief. That is the general. We've got the command trait of the Primal War Beast. You have clarified that we don't have the Cloak of Feathers. It is the
Fusel of Conflagration. I hope I'm saying that right.
I did that partially because I knew I would butcher that completely. And then the weapon is the Sky Streak Bow. You've also got the Lord Croak with the Stellar Tempest again. We've got the Skink Star Priest, Hand of Glory again. You've got a Skink Priest and a Skink Priest. So we've got a little bit of commonality. We've also got 40 Skinks, 20 Saurus Warriors, 5 guard. We've got a Bastillodon, Bound Geminids, Bound Burning Head. I can't wait to talk about Bound Burning Head. It is my favorite endless spell in Seraphon.
Yeah.
So and Paul Castro, his aka Crazy Horse, is asking us to confuse all the new players with the 1+ armor save. So we'll get to that when we talk about Bastillodons. Starting from the top, Stegodon with Skink Chief, the command trait, the artifact, and the I know they're given to us. We have to take them because we're Thunder Lizard. Mm-hmm. But talk about the Stegodon Skink Chief.
So the Skink Chief is a great. I love Stegodons. Now I struggled to not just write a bunch of Stegodons in here. I've got 5 Stegodons myself, so I love running Stegodons. But Stegodon with Skink Chief is a lot of fun. He's can be fast. He can hit hard, and he's got good shooting and good command ability. So his command trait gives him +1 to all his mount attacks, which there's like 3 different profiles for his mount attacks and plenty of attacks that do damage. He has a jaw attack, so he gets +1 from there. You might put the constellation on him. So again, we're stacking all those attacks on top of each other. But he's also pretty tanky. He starts with a 4-up save, but if you put him into the right unit, which is 5 models or less, he gets a +1 from his Stegodon helmet or his Stegodon helm, his big bony head. And so, yeah, if you put him into the right unit, he's going to be a lot harder to kill. His weapon there is the Sky Streak Bow, and this is pretty interesting in that it's got 3 attacks. They're 3s and 3s, -1, but 3 damage. It's this little Sky Streak Bow that the skinks on top of this thing are pulling is incredibly deadly when it actually makes it through. You're probably fishing for one of those to make it through, maybe two, and just kind of plink down those heroes that have already kind of been hurt by Kroak's mortal spells. But it's got good range, 24 inches, and he's got 8-inch move, so you're going to be hitting this thing pretty much wherever you want to into their army. And does good damage. 3 damage from 24 inches plus 8 for his movement. I mean, there's not a lot that you can ask for that. So,
love it. Lord Kroak. You've got Lord Kroak with the same kit out. Is it the same type of role and support that you're bringing in Lord Kroak to play in Thunder Lizard? Or is this model bringing something different to the table in this build?
Nope, pretty much the same thing here in that you're using them for command points because you're in Thunder Lizard. You're going to be firing off these Bastillons as much as you can, and he's going to be there to generate command points, cast that board-wide mortals, and then get your endless spells on the table.
And I imagine the Saurus Guard, at least one of the Saurus Guard unit that you've got, again, plays a similar role to supporting Lord Kroak and absorbing some of those wounds that come at the model.
Yeah, in this list, I took an extra guard unit just to give him a little bit more staying power. If somebody's attacking him, he can hold an objective longer. If he's got 20 wounds, you've got to get through to get to him. So
the Skink Star Priest, similar role, has Hand of Glory, but we've only got one. We've only got one Star Priest. Instead, we've gone 2 regular priests. So I guess why not 2 Star Priests again? And then what did the Skink Priests bring that the Star Priest doesn't?
So the Skink Priest, in my mind, is pound for pound one of the best priests out there. This guy with one roll of a dice on a 3-up, he'll give a unit +1 to their save. They can run and charge and shoot. And one other thing that I'm forgetting, but he gives this prayer to the skink keyworded things, which includes our Stegodon. And so he has an amazing ability. And that prayer right there, +1 to save and run and shoot and charge. I mean, that's right there is powerful that you would pay well more for that for just 1 in my mind. And these guys are incredibly weak. They only have 4 wounds. So I did take 2 of them because I am going to want to put that same buff from their stick on 2 different units if I can turn 1, or make sure I get it on 1 unit.
That's the Starstone staff, right?
Yeah.
So on a 3+, that unit can run and shoot or run and charge in the same turn, and +1 to their armor save.
And he has a command ability that's also pretty good. It gives you +1 to your hits, and so he also can spend the command points that you're building up too.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Yep.
For 70 points, what a great little buff piece that if it dies, who cares? It's 70 points. And it's easy to build in redundancy. 1 Skink Star Priest is almost the same points as 2 Skink Priests. So you're going to have a little bit more flexibility on the table. And hey, we know General's Handbook 2020 now does have some scenarios where you get additional victory points if you have a hero within range. So you've just increased a whole bunch of heroes and opportunities to get those VPs.
And you'll see a lot in both Starborn and Coalesced. I think it has a place for that Skink Star Priest paired up with the priest that goes with our skinks here.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I think most people are loading up on salamanders, loading up on a whole bunch of, I mean, if Tabletop Simulator has anything to do with it, we're seeing 3 to 4 big blocks of maxed out. But we did see the points adjustment in Salamanders in General's Handbook. So you may find that maybe people will move away from that build and look for variety in the Skink Priest.
Yeah, I purposefully stayed away from Salamanders just for these lists. I think a lot of people have seen those. I think they are quite good. But I kind of wanted to do something a little different. So there are ways that Salamanders fit in Coalesce quite well, especially in Thunder Lizard with Thunderquake. They fit in that battalion extremely well. But I kind of wanted to keep it away from the Kroak power unit and all his buffs and Salamanders. I kind of wanted to stay away from that for Coalesce, especially for Thunder Lizard.
That story's been told. All it takes is a 2-second Google search and you'll find an internet list that is based around Kroak, Salamanders, Skinks, and just dropping from the sky, burdinating the peasants.
Mm-hmm.
from a unit selection, you've got your 40 skinks with your bolt splitter, dagger. How many words? World's longest weapon selection. So you've got the daggers and the bucklers. What's the 40 skinks for?
So this is a unit here. I sometimes include it in Coalesced. It does have a critical Achilles heel of Bravery 5. So if you get alpha struck on these guys and you don't have a command point, they're going to start running fast. But they have so much utility and can have so much output that it's just hard not to put them in a list. They also offer you bodies, which Thunder Lizard really needs. It needs some form of bodies on the table because you're usually running a lot of monsters. We've only got 3 monsters in this list. It's a little bit different Thunder Lizard list, but we're trying to take advantage, I think, of what the ability for Thunder Lizards is, and that we're going to try to hit hard in the turn 1 if we can. With this list, if they give us turn 1, we're going to punish you for it. These skinks right here with the Star Priest and the Priest, those are it's going to be their pair that goes along with them, can be brutal. So they have an 8-inch move, but with the Skink Priest, if he gets his prayer off on a 3-up, they can now run and shoot. And so their bolt spitters have an 18-inch range. And now you're talking 14 plus 18. These guys can shoot pretty much whatever they want to when they're running and shooting. And so you're going to throw 80 dice with skinks because they have 1 shot each, but when they're in a horde, they get 2. And so you're throwing 80 shots. You're going to probably use a command point if you have enough for +1 from the priest. And then the Star Priest is going to point his staff on him to give him some mortal output on the wounds of 6. And so you can pretty reliably deal about 15 damage to a 4-up save anywhere on the board with these guys when the buffs happen. So it's a turn 1 hit that I think kind of pairs well with this Thunder Lizard shooting list, which is kind of a little unique.
I think, I love it. And what I love as well is the minute that someone sees a Bastiladon, let alone 2, I imagine a lot of opponents will put all of their focus on the Bastiladon to get it down from the 1+ armor save and get that degrading profile, all while you've just told us about how you've just maximized the skinks. So I don't think a lot of people are going to focus on the skinks. But if they do, then you've got 2 Bastiladons that people aren't focused on and are still running around causing havoc with a 1+ armor save. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what's cool as well is you've obviously got if you wanted to go the battalion build with the Thunder Quake Temple host, while you do have to add the Croxigors to the unit, you do have that flexibility with some additional stuff around running and shooting or getting additional attacks in melee. So again, there's a lot of cool flexibility here.
Yeah. A great build for Thunder Quake that I just love is putting 3 Stegodons on the table in that battalion, and they're going to be running across the board and hitting you turn 1, hitting you hard, 3 monsters, and it's a lot of fun. They'll die to hordes and stuff like that, but they're a heck of a lot of fun to charge across the board.
That is an absolute missile. You just literally just run.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the pink elephant in the room. We talked about guard. We talked about Saurus Warriors. Correct me if I'm wrong. I imagine your Saurus Warriors are screens, very similar to the last role.
Yep.
You've got Saurus Warriors who are there to protect Crow, give a bit more versatility, maybe even hold a back objective.
The guard, I do like. Most people don't take 2 of them. I do kind of like it in that you can allocate 1 wound to one wound to another without killing any models. And then if you switch your spell over to healing, you can heal them back up or heal one of them back up. And so there is a little bit of staying power, little shenanigans you can use if the horde busting spell on Croak isn't useful in that match.
Or worst case scenario, you just drop one of those and take a bound Emerald Life Swarm and just keep bringing back models. So
absolutely.
So annoying. All right, let's talk Bastiladons because I'm seeing in the chat that we are talking about it, and when it very first came out, it caused a lot of confusion. And if you're new to Age of Sigmar, you picked up the battle tome because you love the ideas of running dinosaurs. This is one of those rules that's going to cause confusion with your opponent because the rules interactions and the order and how it all works does cause confusion. So Can you help me understand the Bastillodon and the 1+ armor save shenanigans?
Yeah, it is a little confusing because let's talk quickly about rend. When you're applying rend to a save roll, most of us just apply it to the dice we roll, and we just say their save roll, or we apply it to the save. So if we're looking at something that has a 4-up save, you got rend, we say in our heads he's got 5-up save, and we roll the dice. But that's not really how it works. What you're doing, that rend is modifying the dice roll and not your save. And so a Bastillodon has a 1-up save. And so where it gets confusing is when you're rolling those dice, you don't apply the rend to that 1-up save. You apply it to the dice. And the dice can never be modified below 1. And so when the Bastillodon has a 1-up save, or a 2-up save, sorry, only ones can damage him. And so because I said that wrong. He does have a 1-up save, but natural ones always fail. And so when you're modifying those dice, see, it's confusing. I did a whole video on it for like 20 minutes. We talked about
that's right. That's right. We're gonna get this out of you, and then we're gonna break it down into a real example. So keep going.
So you're modifying the dice. So it doesn't matter how much rend you have. The dice can only go down to a 1, and then you compare it to his save, and only ones are going to fail against his save. And so it doesn't matter what you roll. Only natural ones are going to fail. And so it's kind of an odd interaction there. I think it's a little bit easier to think until you put enough damage on him to bracket him, only natural ones are going to fail. That's the easiest way to look at it.
Now, the confusing or annoying or frustrating, depending on which side of the table you're on, is that it's not hard for you to get a reroll 1 armor save. Command point, Mystic Shield, you're going to be able to get someone to be able to reroll once.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk to your opponent, because I can see this is a real bad, a feel bad situation, when you're talking to your opponent and they're like, well, how do I kill it? Until it has suffered 3 wounds. So it needs to suffer, when you look at the bracket, the 0 to 2 bracket, you need to be able to put basically 3 wounds. So you need 3 ones. That's really what you need. If someone has Mystic Shield or has some way of rerolling the armor save, you really try to get as much damage as possible and get as many ones on the table until you bracket it to 3 wounds taken. The more wounds that it takes, the easier it is, because it then loses that 1+ armor save. You'll see the bracket goes down to a 2+, a 3+, a 4+, and it'll just keep going down. The other thing to call out, and Crazy Horse is beating me to the punch, so thank you for being a gentleman and a scholar, is that the 1+ armor save doesn't affect mortal wounds. So if you pop 3 mortal wounds on the Bastillodon, we're now at a 2+ armor save. Yeah, and then you put a couple more wounds on, it's at a 3+ armor save. So it just degrades as it goes.
And there's plenty of things that can plink 3 mortals onto things in this game. And I've lost quite a few Bastillodons in the games I've played. They're not invulnerable. They're not invincible. They will go down. Put a couple mortals on them, and all of a sudden, all that rend applies. Because they no longer have a 1-up save, the rend that you apply down to a 1 matters. And so they can, basically, until they take those 3 wounds, rend doesn't really matter. Once they take those 3 wounds, rend matters. So...
And as Haywo Twitch in the chat has called out, the hot take really here is your opponent really should be focusing their mortal wounds. Unless you have a complete weight of dice where you're able to shoot 60 shots at the Bastillodon, and you're fishing for the ones. You know, mortal wounds would be the priority. Then second would be attacks. And you're going for quantity of attacks, not quality attacks. So that's how I would think about it if I was an opponent, because I imagine you will have to explain this and try to explain it clearly to make sure that your opponent doesn't have a feel bad.
Yeah. Explain to them how it works. There's a great little chart, and I'll try to put it in the comments later, that shows kind of clearly how this works and with the dice. And I think it really will click. If you hand that to your opponent and say, here's how it works, they'll understand it.
Yeah. So it's only 1+ when it's unwounded. The minute it takes 3 wounds, the game changes a lot.
So a lot of times in this list, what I do with Croak is he's got extra spells that you're not going to be able to cast turn 1. make sure you always pop Mystic Shield onto one of these Bastildons, so they're only taking damage on a 1-up, and that's a re-rolling. So unless they can do mortals, it will take a lot. So kind of offer that Mystic Shield one up the field a little bit to where kind of bait them into it if they don't have ways to do mortals.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely want the models, and there's ways around doing that. You might be able to protect your Bastillodon with Emerald Life Swarm, look for ways for healing it, but it will be a big focus, or people will just completely ignore it if they don't have the tools to be able to handle it with mortal wounds or with lots of attacks. And again, Haywo with the hot takes has said when it's at its top bracket, consider it as ethereal, which is great, which means no rend. It's just the way that the 1+ then works. So just keep in mind that that's a nice way of explaining it. So it's unwounded for the first 2 wounds, treated as ethereal, and you need me to roll 1s on my armor save, or just hit me with mortals.
And of note, the extra 2 wounds you get for monsters, it doesn't apply to the top end of the bracket. It applies at the lower end. So those extra 2 wounds from Thunder Lizard come on the backside. So
yeah. So your Bastillodons are coming in. They do some good damage against Chaos Demons. They get the +1 damage. They've got a 24-inch long range solar engine beam. They're coming in with mortal wounds with the Arc of Sotek if you roll a 6 to hit. Just generally good stuff coming out of the Bastillodon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not going to do. They're more consistent than they used to be on their damage. I wouldn't count on them deleting hordes and things like that. These are surgical solar engine strikes that you're doing because they do hit on 4s. You have 9 attacks, 4s and 3s, only -1 rend. They do 2 damage though. So it can spike high sometimes, and that's really nice. But it can also, you can fail quite a few of those, and especially if they have a good armor save. It's only -1 rend. So.
Unwounded, you're getting 9 attacks though, so it's 9 attacks, hitting on 4s. If you didn't buff them or anything, hitting on 4s, so what's that? 4.5 go through. Wounding on 3s, that's what, 2.5, 3 go through. Rend, yeah. I mean, you can probably do some consistent damage, but you're right, it's not going to just absolutely nuke the opponent.
I think Math Hammered, it's 4 damage against a 4-up save is what you should statistically do. But Bastillodons have fun tricks. So in this list, you've got 2 of them. So you're going to be using those command points to double fire them. So you're doubling that damage that they're doing. And now you're talking, 16 damage against the 4-up save output from 29 inches away. These guys all of a sudden become a lot scarier in Thunder Lizards.
Yeah.
Yep.
Finally, I can't wait to talk about this. This is like my favorite thing. Bound. So you've got Bound Geminids. Boring. We know what that does. The Bound Burning Head. This is something that a lot of people probably haven't even painted. It's one that I like in my Gits army. It's still good value, but under Bound version, it's just incredible. I wish I could bound this in so many armies. Talk to me about Burning Head, why Bound matters, and what does it do for you?
Yeah, Bound Burning Head is one of those spells that you don't really take all that often outside. I mean, I don't think I've ever fielded it until it became Bound, because it can come back and hurt you. It does D3 mortals against whatever it passes over, but it also gives a reroll hit rolls of 1. And so you've got this ability, and it's within a range of 12
inches. 9 inches? 12?
9 inches, it may be 9.
I think it's 9 or 12.
Okay. And so a lot of times you wouldn't want to cast that to an enemy and give them D3 mortal wounds and then reroll hit rolls of 1. Why would you do that? But here in this list, when it's bound, it's under my control. And so a lot of times I'll park this either next to the Skinks if they need a reroll hit rolls of 1. But I love it in between my Bastillodons. It'll just sit there in this bubble with my Bastillodons. And now they're doing even more damage. They're rerolling their hit rolls of 1, and we're double firing them at a 29-inch threat range. These guys are, we're stacking those synergies on top of these things and making them a little bit more damaging, And now this Burning Head is pretty interesting. I like it.
Yeah, I look, I was running it in my Gits army when I had 2 colossal squeaks, and I just send them forth to go destroy. And if they have 16 wounds apiece, it doesn't matter if they take D3 mortal wounds. Yeah. But for 40 points, you're essentially getting two command points because they're rerolling one. So anything it's wholly within 9. Thank you for clarifying it, chat. It's wholly within 9. So I found it was really good for independent models or a large monster base, not necessarily like a big block. There's a bit of manipulation, but having 2 Bastiladons, having 2 Colossal Squigs, having two Vampire Lords on Zombie Dragons, that's the kind of thing that would really take advantage of it. And you're essentially spending you're gaining 2 command points by not having to reroll 1. So that's sexy.
Yeah, and you're double firing those. So I mean, it's almost like you're using what would normally cost 4 command points if you wanted to do it on every time you're going to roll those dice on those 2 Bastildons. So I love it. So
with the 9 attacks from the Solar Engine, you're getting a lot more consistency and a lot more value again out of the double Bastiladons. And for 220 points, again, we just talked about the 1+ armor save and how that works. That's crazy value while the rest of your army is coming up the board and just claiming objectives, killing opponents, doing what it does.
Yeah. So in this list, it's kind of designed to hit hard turn 1, but in a little bit of a different way than what some expect. That Stegadon and Skink Chief, if he gets the prayer off from the Skink Priest, he's moving up the board pretty quick, and he can make a charge. If you move the Constellation to +1 to run and charge, he's getting even further. So you're hitting with him, you're shooting with him, you're using that Fusel of Conflagration with him, you're hitting with Kroak's Mortals, you're hitting with the Skinks as they're throwing 80 dice at somebody, doing Mortals on the wounds, and then you're firing Bastildons 4 times and hitting with Geminids. So this is, it doesn't look like it has a lot of synergy, it just kind of looks all over the board, but this thing is going to hit turn 1 extremely hard. Surgically against certain things, you need to know what your threat ranges are or your threats are on the table. But it's going to be a fun list. It's for you.
Again, it's a fun game, right? I think this has the potential of having a great game. Again, season for taste. You might want to put in a Stegadon. You might want to put in Pterodons or Ripidactyls if you want some speed and mobility. You might want to, remove the Skinks and put in more Saurus Warriors or more Saurus Warriors into more Skinks. Again, kind of tweak and tailor, maybe Chronomatic Cogs for more speed, maybe a Purple Sun for more damage. I think what I'm seeing here is 2 really fun, different builds that aren't put in the Dread Saurian. Like, put the goddamn Dread Saurian in, and if you want to talk about a bullet, just run that big base up the table.
Or if you really want to make your opponent mad, a Dread Saurian on one side and then Gotrek allied in on the other.
You're nasty. You're a nasty hole. That's brutal. But again, I think the purpose of this show, and there were some comments about Starborn. Starborn is stronger. Like the pink elephant in the room is Starborn is stronger. But I think I challenge Caleb to show me off some different lists in a Coalesced, and I think we could both agree that these are competitive. You'll still go to a tournament, get at least 3 wins. This is at least a 3-win kind of, as long as you play it right. There's no reason you couldn't go 3-2 or 4-1 with this type of build, with practice and knowing what you're doing.
Absolutely.
This is not like a hot garbage list, but certainly you're going to have probably a better player experience with this than if you just had Starborn with Slann, dropping down Salamanders, burning everything within 12.
Yeah. Salamanders are nasty.
Teleport. But you're going to have a better experience with your opponents. So maybe this is a way to look forward to and keep the viability of Seraphon alive.
Yeah, Coalesced is a lot of fun, especially if you like monsters. If you like Stegadons, Carnosaurs, Bastildons, this is where you play them at. This is where you have a lot of fun with Coalesced and with Seraphon.
So I guess I've got one final comment or question to ask, and that is, with all of your experience playing Seraphon, talking about Seraphon on your YouTube channel, again, if you want to learn more about Seraphon, I highly recommend going and subscribing and checking out Caleb's YouTube channel. It's 100% dedicated to Seraphon. What have you learnt along the way? What's the tips, the tricks, the tactics, the things that, if I picked up this battle tome for the first time, may not be evident just by reading the War Scroll? Is there anything that you'd tell me as a new player?
I think you've got to look beyond the War Scrolls. If you're looking at just the War Scrolls, you're not going to get the full aspect of this army. Some armies you can you can, like, you look at eels and you understand what they do, and you don't have to do much else in Idoneth Deepkin with eels. In this army, you've got to figure out those synergies, how they work. And it's not always like everything in one bucket. You pick and choose from across the army, and it's got such a wide model range that you can have a viable list, I think, in this book, a lot of different ways. So look for those synergies. Remember to stack those things on top of each other, because you can get some crazy output once you get those synergies clicking together.
Anything else?
My favorite thing about Seraphon is the Stegodons, in that they have a perfect howdah on the back to add whatever you want to on the back. So this thing is nice and flat. It's a kit bashing dream to add to your Stegodons. So put things on there. I have a Celestial Hurricanum.
I was just about to say, I've seen really cool Hurricanum and Luminarchs used with the Stegodon.
I've got some of the Celestial Ballistas from Stormcast to represent these Sky Streak bows. They've, Stegodons have these bows on top, so I've got skinks pulling these giant ballistas on top. It's a lot of fun. These things are made to be kit bash. These Stegodons are. So if you're running some Stegodons, have some fun with the model there.
They seem to be wonderful to paint. They look like they are, despite some models being quite old, they go to contrast paint really well, given the scales, given the detail. It is an easy army to paint. I like the colors. There's a gentleman in my gaming club, Chris Welfare, that decided to paint all of his skinks like Skittles. So he's got like big blocks of skinks, but you got yellows and oranges and reds and purples and blues, and it just looks lovely. And that is nature. That is lizards. That is reptilian. And you could go, streaks and patterns. You could go as crazy as you want, but also you don't have to. Yeah.
If you want a brightly colored army, you can have fun with this army. I've seen all different types of colors. Mine is pretty bright. On the table, especially compared to some of the guys I play with. He's got like a camo themed army, and then here's my bright in your face kind of army on the table. So you can have a lot of fun, and it is perfect for contrast paint. All the scales take perfectly to that.
And you can do other things. You can go to the aquarium store and buy like aquarium plants to do the jungles. You could use resin to create water and, make a wet kind of feel. There's a lot you can do with this army. And I think that as a hobbyist, certainly draws my attention, not just the play style, but as an overall army, it's one that you'll enjoy for a long time.
Absolutely.
Any final closing comments, or let's bring this show home?
I would, if you're looking for more on Seraphon, go to Lustria Online. It's a website that it's just all Seraphon players, and it's an awesome community. It got me in. They have everybody debating about lists, about rules, about models. It's an entire website dedicated to Seraphon. So it's a great resource if you're looking to get into Seraphon.
And the shameless plug is his channel as well.
Yeah,
is absolutely incredible. Caleb, thank you very much for what I think was a really detailed and differing view to Seraphon. The chat has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining us live here on chat. I hope we've inspired some people to try things out. You may still go back to Starborn at your next tournament, but playing with Coalesced and exploring the other types of builds, putting your Stegodons on the table, bringing down your Ripidactyls, bringing in your Saurus Knights. I think we've kind of proven that there's still a lot of value to be putting on the table other than just salamanders, skinks.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Have fun. This is a fun army, and you can go a lot of different ways with it.
All right, Caleb, chat, thank you very much. I'm going to go to work. See you guys.
See you.
G'day. I hope you enjoyed that video and you're left with some new ideas. One of the biggest ways you can contribute to AOS Coach is by liking the video you just watched and leaving a comment in the comment section. This lets YouTube know this is a good video and it should recommend it to other hobbyists. If you'd also like to support the channel even further like these bloody legends, go check out AOS Coach on Patreon. Otherwise, don't forget your triumph.